really excited about this upcoming panel. It's not going to focus on the question of whether a place matters, but instead focus on what I think are more important questions, which is how and what makes one place matter over another. I'm doubly excited about this panel because our own Chancellor, Randy Woodson, is moderating it. Not just because he is my boss, but I promise you, this guy is a visionary and he's leading NC State in wonderful ways, and he gets the importance of place. He embodies the importance of innovation, and he is pushing all of us to do more for more people in more places across North Carolina, consistent with the mission of a land-grant university. He also is a member of the IEI National Advisory Board, which means he's watching me closely. With that, let me bring to the stage the Chancellor of NC State University, moderating this important panel on the significance of Innovation Place, Randy Woodson.
Well, hello everyone. Back from break, feeling refreshed and excited. Thank you, Anita. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today with a great panel. You're going to hear a lot of interesting stories about the critical role space plays in various contexts. And it's a great thing for NC State to be part of this discussion. You know, when I think back about the visionary leadership that brought us Centennial Campus and the property that we now enjoy developing, it took really visionary leadership and an idea that a university could partner so carefully with the private sector. For those of you that haven't visited Centennial Campus in a while, I would encourage you to do that. We have over 70 public and private partners on our campus, including ABB, WebAssign, Bandwidth, LexisNexis, Grifols, Eastman Chemical, and yes, even MBA Business School from Paris, France, Schema, which has over 300 MBA students from France on our campus each semester. And I know our students really enjoy having French men and women to hang around with. You know, I'm just saying. Also, when you drive on campus, you get the impression that it's strictly a real estate play as a business venture. I need to remind you all, it's also the home of our College of Engineering, the College of Textiles, and there are 8,000 students that study on that campus every day, and over 1,200 students that call it home. So it really has become a living and learning community. Anchoring our Centennial Campus is the James B. Hunt Library, one of the most innovative spaces in America, and recently was ranked as one of only 2 libraries in America to be the most innovative in the world. And that's in the top 50 list. So we're doing a lot of great things on our campus that all revolve around the question of space and how space matters. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we've assembled an outstanding panel to bring a number of different perspectives to this conversation. We're privileged to bring to you 4 approaches to place-based innovation, united by their focus on contribution to reimagining what existing space can be. First, we're going to start with 22 at Barcelona in Spain. It's our global model for urban redevelopment, and it's known around the world. Closer to home, we'll be talking with Research Triangle Park, a long-established but not immune to the need to reinvent itself on occasion, and that certainly is happening now. And we'll hear from American Underground in Durham, and close to home also, the School of Science and Mathematics, really an innovative high school that's doing amazing things across the state. So let's start. We're privileged today to have Enrique Fuster here with us. Enrique is an urban innovation consultant with the firm Innopro Global Services. For the past 3 years, Enrique has worked on the development of 22 at Barcelona as a model on how to translate that to other spaces. So the 22 at Barcelona Innovation District initiative turned a rundown urban industrial district into a thriving metropolitan center with 5 knowledge-intensive clusters. Launched in 2000 by the Spanish government, the initiative engaged internationally renowned architects to design a compelling skyline of landmark buildings and imaginative public parks offering outdoor playgrounds and open spaces for people to congregate. 22 at Barcelona took an integrated approach to urban redevelopment. While each industry cluster is segregated into distinct districts containing residential areas and amenities, they're connected. And this is a theme that I think you'll hear throughout the day, connectivity, where collisions occur, not by chance, but by design. And they're connected by centralized utilities and telecommunications infrastructure, as well as smart traffic management systems, something we could use on I-40. I'm just suggesting. Their proximity to each other within the innovation district ensures their cohesiveness, and most importantly, public spaces and transportation link the district to nearby city center. With formal and informal networks designed to accelerate the pace of innovation and the knowledge-sharing process, just 15 years later, there are 90,000 employees. 90,000 employees working for 7,000 companies and 23% more residents living in the neighborhoods. Today, cities around the globe are looking at 22 at Barcelona as a model for urban redevelopment. Enrique, it's wonderful to have you here. He's promised us, he's the lead-off speaker, and if the questions get too intense, we're reverting to Spanish. So the best examples of innovative spaces seem to be built around the idea that population and density matters. How is density important, and is it enough?
Thank you very much, Chancellor, for having me here. Well, density was important for 22 at Barcelona for at least 3 reasons. First, density is an incentive for private investment in real estate. So it's easier later for companies to have access to room at a better cost. Also, in cities, in dense cities, it's easier for utilities and municipalities to provide better infrastructure at a lower cost and with great coverage. We are now all having problems to deploy optical fiber to our lower density neighborhoods. This is a solution from the start. The second reason is that under Spanish law, when there is development, capital gain taxes can be paid for by transferring land to the public. So more density means more value, and in the end, more land for the public and accessible to 22 at Barcelona. In fact, it went from 10% to 40% during the 8-year development process. And what was done with this public space was crucial to the success of the project. It was obviously developed in green areas and infrastructure and social housing, but it was also granted to 6 universities when there was none before in the area, and 12 research and technology centers. And that's the third reason why density was important. You were concentrating companies, startups, universities, research centers nearby in a mixed-use urban environment that facilitates exchange, mutual knowledge, collaboration, and innovation at some point. You explained well that these institutions and companies were distributed in 5 clusters, ICT, media, design, energy, and they share common facilities, common labs, so that really professionals, students, and researchers have one foot in academia and one foot in the industry, but literally. So this is about the structural methods of fostering innovation and collaboration. But there was also soft mechanisms in place, and they are still existing. Obviously, networking events, internships in innovative companies, the creation of several mixed research centers. There is one of the few Yahoo labs outside of the US, where about 60 engineers from Yahoo work hand by hand under the same roof with university researchers. And so it's obviously important to have density, but it is also what you do with this density. So it has to be managed.
A lot of cities around the world are looking at 22 at Barcelona as a model. You've been in North Carolina for 2 days now, so we consider you an expert. What do you think about Barcelona is transferable here to the US or the North Carolina experience?
Well, I believe it is a useful model for declining urban areas, but also as a project model for any kind of development, even greenfields development. We believe that you have to build a model, so you have to understand what's happening, and you have to have a clear strategy, a wide strategy, innovation strategy for the place or for the city you're thinking of. About the practical experiences, first, leadership and governance, and leadership and governance, and leadership and governance, because these are very long projects, and they are complex. So you have to have the executive capacity to define urban planning and to make decisions about real estate, but you also have to be able to create the programs and foster the creation of new research centers, as it happened, or facilitate the growth of startups, because this kind of non-obvious synergies is what creates value. So it's merging the space management and innovation management that makes the difference, and projects that fail to merge these two souls either never develop because they don't make sense from a real estate point of view, and this happens everywhere in the world, projects that are designed but never built, or they become discrete, random sets of buildings and communities that don't become a real innovation ecosystem. Second, you have to have a long-term commitment and be flexible and aim for modular and iterative designs that allows you to adapt to changing conditions, but you must always have your urban planning ready, an answer to demands at any point, or you will lose opportunities. Third, it is very important to empower and let stakeholders co-design the project and decentralize the process, and also habilitate the channels so that everybody, citizens in particular, benefit from social, economic, and urban improvements. This will also, to some degree, isolate the project from the political arena. In fact, during the whole 22 at Barcelona project, there was unanimity there was 100% vote for in the city council, which made things easier. And finally, you have to believe in your project, because good projects have a life of their own. They become living animals. In fact, 22 at Barcelona is almost only a brand now, but it has evolved into the Barcelona Smart City, which is a leading urban lab, and has recently, last year, attracted important investment from Cisco, from Schneider Electric, or from Siemens.
Fantastic. Thank you, Enrique. Let me take what you just said and turn to our other panelists, because in many ways they're attempting to do what you did, which is reimagine an existing space. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Bob Geolas. Bob is the president and CEO of Research Triangle Foundation of North Carolina. He brings more than 20 years of experience. You wouldn't recognize that by his youthful appearance, but 20 years of experience and a proven track record of leveraging world-class education, research, and business activities. Prior to being named the president and CEO of the foundation in 2011, Bob served as an executive director of the Clemson University International Center for Automotive Research and associate vice president for economic development. Before that, Bob cut his teeth in this business on our own Centennial campus, and really much of what we experience today is because of Bob's great leadership. So the story of Research Triangle Park is well known to many in the room today and many around the world. Out of the scrub pines and fallow farmland, RTP developed into the home of branch locations of major companies like IBM, Nortel, Burroughs Wellcome, and each spread out on their own corporate campuses. Today, RTP is home for some 38,000 workers and more than 170 companies, from Fortune 100 multinationals to cutting-edge entrepreneurial startups. It put North Carolina on the innovation map. Despite the success, RTP leaders recognize that 21st century innovation requires an updated approach that encourages more collaboration and creativity. Their new Park Center plan will invest hundreds of millions of dollars to integrate work, housing, retail, recreation, and high-tech amenities in an environmentally friendly space, friendly to walkers, to bikers, and we hope to light rail, connecting local communities to the airport. This bold new vision that converges science, technology, art, and the humanities offers a highly desirable quality of life, and expects to generate 100,000 new jobs, 2.5 times the current number. Bob, listening to Enrique, what resonated with you in terms of how you're trying to reinvent the park? For instance, how do density and networks figure into your plans?
Well, density is critical, not just physical density, but programmatic density. The heart of what makes Research Triangle Park successful, it's made it successful for 50 years, are the programs of the universities. We'd be nothing but a big land development without the university. So at the heart of everything we do in thinking about the physical space is how does that serve to enhance the programs of our universities, to provide for more meaningful work and help lift other people up. So the density issue is important. I like to remind people we're 7,000 acres. That means we're half the size of the island of Manhattan, and you can't buy a Starbucks coffee anywhere in Research Triangle Park. Now, whether it's Starbucks or any kind of coffee, the point is you have to have places where people are going to want to get together, share ideas. And so in our redevelopment of the Research Triangle Park, we talk about 4 elements that we believe are critical, that are tied back to this idea of density. One is we need highly collaborative spaces, both physical spaces where people can gather and engage, but also programmatically collaborative spaces. Where are the events, where are the activities where people can play and learn together and share ideas? So it's not just the physical space, but the program space to go with it that has to be collaborative. Second is it's got to be authentically us. So the physical design can't look like a downtown or urban center that already exists. It can't look like Boston or Austin or Silicon Valley. It's got to look like who we are as North Carolinians. So working with great designers and thinkers and architects to create a dense space that is also representative and authentic to our location. Third, it needs to be inspiring. The great stories of Research Triangle Park are the stories of all the great innovations and how they've changed people's lives. And yet you get no sense of that when you arrive in Research Triangle Park today. It's hidden behind the trees. And that's a shame, because if you're trying to inspire young people and get them optimistic and excited about the future, you've got to put those technologies out there where they can feel engaged with them. The physical spaces need to be inspiring as well, because nothing gets us feeling better about our future than knowing we're willing to invest in it with great infrastructure. The Hunt Library at Centennial is a great example of that. And finally, you have to make it as accessible and as affordable as possible, because the future of big ideas is about getting the barriers out of the way, the things that typically clog up the innovation process, overly burdensome lease rates, overly complicated real estate deals. We ought to find a way to simplify that, create flexible and affordable spaces to make that happen.
I think you've touched on this, but who do you envision as the key players as you go through this process?
The universities, first and foremost. I mean, we were created with a mission statement that says we're to do 3 things. We are to support education, create meaningful work, and help lift up all the people of the state of North Carolina. So we begin with our key stewards. How are we serving our universities? And how do we, in that stewardship, embrace a culture at Research Triangle Park that I think is really built on an abundance of faith. Faith in each other as North Carolinians, a faith in our institutions, our universities, our government, our industry, how they work together, and a great faith in the future. North Carolinians are a greatly optimistic bunch. You know, we don't sit around and wring our hands about the future. We jump in there and get things done. And so I think for us to make this environment work, it goes to serving that mission and serving that culture.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Speaking of jumping in there with both hands and getting things done and eternal optimism, let's turn now to Adam Klein. Adam is the chief strategist for the American Underground, a thriving campus for entrepreneurs in downtown Durham and downtown Raleigh. Under his leadership, Google designated American Underground as one of only 7 sites in the country to be part of its exclusive tech hub network. And at a time when cities are struggling to reinvent themselves, American Underground has become a national model for how to transform a once depressed downtown into a magnet for high-growth companies. I'm particularly impressed that American Underground has made a strong commitment, a really strong commitment, to increasing diversity in the tech innovation community. They've tripled the number of women-owned enterprises in their spaces, formed an initiative with Google to bring more African-American entrepreneurs to the field, and offer free coding boot camps for underprivileged youth in the community. In total, American Underground is home for more than 200 startup companies across 95,000 square feet of space. In 2014 alone, companies in American Underground raised $40 million in venture funding and created 323 jobs. Adam, Durham is currently a different place, without a doubt, today than it was 20 or 30 years ago. And innovation and entrepreneurship are important parts of this reinvention story. One of the criticisms leveled against the world of innovation, particularly in the hot spots of Silicon Valley, Boston, and even here in North Carolina, is the lack of diversity. At American Underground, you're working hard on this question and bringing real value to the table. So tell us why you've chosen to make this issue a core part of your business plan and what it means to American Underground.
Thank you, Chancellor. Well, it's great to be with you all. And I'm going to start with an example from a story I heard when I was at Google in September. It goes back to 2012. And the story is that YouTube, a subsidiary of Google, had just launched their app where you could take a video on your smartphone and upload it straight to the website. So the app gets launched, and the first day the developers are anxiously watching its performance, and they note that 10% of the videos coming in are uploading upside down. They're really confused at why this is happening. And the reason is that when you're right-handed, you take a video this way, and when you're left-handed, you take a video this way. Google unwittingly and YouTube had built a software development team full of right-handed developers, and so no one was there to catch this error. And that example, I know, is a very basic one when we're talking about something as complex and important as diversity, but I think it highlights something that's very fundamental to what we believe at the American Underground, which is that diversity is at the core of building great businesses. There's lots of research that backs that I don't have time to go into. I'd love to talk to you all offline about that. But simply put, the American Underground is looking to become the most diverse technology hub in the country. And we think North Carolina has a huge future here to differentiate itself from what's happened in Silicon Valley and other metros that have focused on innovation. I'm going to share 3 examples of the infrastructure and ecosystem that we're trying to build to enable that to be a possibility. I'll begin with one called SOAR Triangle. This is an initiative we launched with Groundwork Labs and Google for Entrepreneurs at the beginning of 2014, aimed at closing the empirically proven gap that exists for female-led firms. So while many of these female-led firms perform very well in venture portfolios, they're often undercapitalized. I heard an earlier panelist talk about this. But they outperform their male counterparts. And so our goal was to mentor 4 teams, very high caliber female-led teams with deep mentoring, but also access to strong venture networks. And I'm pleased to say that among those 4 teams, within 1 year, one has a 6-figure term sheet in front of it today, and another raised $50,000 from NCID as part of its grant process. The other piece of that was our American Underground staff took a hard look at how we could build a more inclusive workspace. And so we talked to a lot of the women in our space and asked what we could do. And one of the things that came from that was to build a nursing room inside our space. It's a place for young moms to feel like they're supported when they're at work. We moved a lot of our happy hour events that are in the evenings, typically up to about 4 o'clock, so that working parents could participate and be a part of that. And again, as small as it sounds, serving wine instead of beer only at events made for a more inclusive experience. And so in total, when you look at all of that together, we tripled the number of female-led firms at the American Underground in 1 year. We're really excited about that. The second example is an initiative called Code the Dream, which we launched with our partner Uniting NC last year. And that was targeting young immigrants in our community who are twice as likely to start a company and yet have limited access to technology opportunities. And so our job was to find ways to train them in the most relevant software development language, Ruby on Rails, for those of you familiar with that, in a 1-month program. So we launched this inside the American Underground. We had our teams mentoring and helping to teach these startups along with the Uniting NC staff. At the end of it, we worked with 15 18 to 25-year-old Latino students, one of whom just received a scholarship to the Iron Yard Academy. You're going to hear about that code school in just a minute. And he is working his way through that program. At the end of that, he will be eligible for an entry-level software developer job, making $40,000 to $50,000 a year. That is totally changing the trajectory of his family, and that's something that I think is really, really critical in this conversation. Those coding jobs are our new manufacturing jobs. So there's huge opportunity there as North Carolinians. We just launched that program again in our American Underground at Raleigh space last week, and we're excited about that. The last initiative that I want to talk a little bit about is something that came out last week in partnership with an organization called Code 2040. And this is the first time that we're going to hire an entrepreneur in residence who is going to work actively to support minority-led ventures in the American Underground, across Durham, the Triangle region, and the state, to support them with great mentoring, but also platform them for exceptional success. That entrepreneur we hope to have on board here in April, and I think big things are to come of that. Durham was one of 3 hubs selected to do that. So in the end, this goal of becoming one of the most diverse technology hubs is big. It's a big reach for us, but it's one of the things that we think is a huge opportunity for North Carolina. It's a big differentiator. When you talk about reconstructing innovation, making North Carolina this diverse, incredibly open, and accessible technology spot is something that would be a huge achievement for us. It's something that if we do that, we'll do something more significant and more important than Silicon Valley has done. So we're really excited about that, and we're ready to get to work. Thank you.
Great, Adam. Thank you. Now let's turn to Todd Roberts, the Chancellor at the North Carolina School of Science and Math. Appointed in 2010, Todd came to the School of Science and Math from his role as superintendent of Ann Arbor Public Schools in Michigan, obviously, where he was named the 2009 Superintendent of the Year in Michigan Region 8. Todd is a native of North Carolina, went to Duke, played golf, still plays golf, I'm told, and is a graduate of Durham Southern High School. He also is a graduate of both, as I said, Duke and UNC Chapel Hill. As I shared earlier, the School of Science and Math recently won IEI's Spaces for Innovation Challenge with their Commons narrative and a video submission. You all did such a great video that I'd like everyone to see this. So let's take a moment before you start, Todd, and look at the video.
It took vision in 1980 to imagine that an abandoned hospital in Durham, North Carolina would grow into a home for a new and cutting-edge model for education. And few could have imagined that just a few decades later, the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics would be a hotbed of innovation, replicated by 18 schools around the globe. While a proud part of the Bull City, NCSSM isn't just a hub for Durham or the Research Triangle. We prove that creativity and innovation isn't tied to a physical place or a specific timeline. Our students can pursue a full diploma on our campus or participate in a range of other programs, like taking a week-long summer course or semester-long online classes from their home community. We offer interactive video conferencing courses to schools around the state, connecting North Carolina school systems from Morganton to Cape Hatteras. We create, curate, and freely share teaching resources that have reached over 2 million learners. NCSSM fuels a passion for science, technology, engineering, and math across the state. We encourage curious minds to take new and innovative ideas back to their home communities, spurring entrepreneurship and investment unique to North Carolina's economy and culture. Nearly half of NCSSM's more than 8,000 alumni live and work in the state, contributing $500 million to the state economy each year. They have gone on to form companies, file patents, and become leaders in technology, government, medicine, education, and business all over North Carolina. NCSSM creates an interconnected community on and off campus that encourages a diversity of ideas to flourish. It's a proven ground for innovation, inspiring students and providing the opportunities and resources for them to experiment, take risks, and think big.
Todd has mentioned in the video, the School of Science and Math was born out of an abandoned hospital. The amazing thing about this story is that Todd was actually born in that hospital.
A lot of good things have happened since.
After your birth, the hospital went down?
No, got improved significantly after I got out of there.
No, it's a great story. But you didn't stop there. You're now a leader in delivery of virtual science, technology, engineering, and math education across our great state, meeting an important educational need, as was said in the video, from Murphy to Manio. How have you been able to take what is working well in physical space on campus and deliver it across the state in a virtual way?
Thank you, Randy. And I'd have to say thanks to the folks at NCSSM who put this video together. We have a lot of talented people that work to do that. One of the things that I've really has resonated with me over the past couple of days is North Carolina as a whole in the 1980s was a hotbed of innovation. If you think about this forum was born in the 80s, the Biotech Center and NCSSM, a great innovative ecosystem in the state. And so one of the things that we're able to do when you think about innovation, it's not just the space itself. It's what happens inside the space that really spurs innovation and allows that creativity to flow. And so what we've done for the past 35 years at NCSSM on campus is to take talented students from all over the state, bring them together, and provide an incubator for them to experience outstanding faculty and teaching, but more importantly, to collaborate amongst themselves. And we heard a lot yesterday about the need for connectivity physically as well as technologically. And so on campus, the students are able to do that. And we have, being a residential school, sometimes people say, well, what's the special sauce? And that's one of the pieces of it. Classes in at 4:15, but the learning goes on far beyond that. And so that's one of the things that's made the school special over the years. So about the mid-1990s, we began to provide virtual education across the state. And we started that first through public television, providing high-level STEM courses to students all across the state. We all know, and we talked about this yesterday, some of the statistics we saw of where innovation is happening in the state and where it's not. We're a very diverse state, which is one of our great strengths, but it also provides some challenges as well. And so you have talented students all across the state, and in order to better meet those needs, we were able to begin partnering with school districts to identify what those needs are and to serve them virtually. First through public television, then through video conference. We have 4 studios on campus where we teach synchronous video conference classes ranging from AP statistics to honors aerospace engineering to students all across the state. In 2007, we added to that with our online program at the school, and so now we teach over 800 students virtually over about 1,200 different courses through our virtual program. One of the things we were really intentional about was thinking, how do we create the same kind of space that allows for collaboration virtually? It's different than doing it face-to-face, but many of the principles are the same. You want to bring students together in a collaborative environment in the classroom. We're able to do that synchronously through video conference and online. We also have them come to campus a couple of times each semester to build that community, to meet with the teacher. Our teachers go out to meet with the students. They're teaching through video conference. And what it does is to create a collaborative community amongst the learners in the classroom and the teachers. A lot of times people think about online education, you think about somebody's with a computer by themselves, dealing with the teacher or the material. But what we've tried to do is to make it so that the students are getting that same rich experience with each other that they do in a residential class. We have in video conference, for example, in one of our classes, we may have 25 students in the class, but they're coming from 6 different high schools. So like they do on the campus, there are students that would never otherwise interact are getting the opportunity to do that virtually, and there's this huge benefit from that. We talked about some of the diversity that Adam just mentioned, and it's an opportunity for students to come together and work in diverse environments that they may not otherwise experience. If you look at the state as a whole, about 50% of our students attend schools in rural schools. So what we're able to do is help provide some opportunities for those students that might not otherwise exist. And we do that through great partnerships with the school districts. We've been extremely fortunate to be well received within school districts and to work with them collaboratively to help identify needs and help them meet those needs. It's not us coming in and doing it for students. It's working collaboratively with those school districts to be able to do that. 66% of the students in our virtual classes come from low-wealth schools. So we're really able to help meet a need that exists out there in the community and try to create the same kind of collaborative environment among students and adults that we do in the residential classes.
So Todd, I have one question. Is the room you were born in identified with a plaque on the wall, or?
There's a crack on the floor from where they dropped me, actually.
So we've talked a lot this morning about geography and the importance and the way geography ties into space. Clearly with the work at the School of Science and Math, you're breaking those bounds of geography. Enrique, when you think about geography from a political and a geopolitical sense, how does that affect the work that you do from a city geography to a national geography and beyond?
Well, it obviously affects because from the public sector, there are boundaries that you cannot cross. So in terms of regulation of real estate, of urban planning, you have to take this into account. But when you think about the soft parts of the innovation ecosystem, you cannot be limited by these boundaries. So I believe it is important to also bring together the public sector in neighboring areas and build consortia that work together in the whole project, and this will ease jumping these boundaries along the road.
Bob, I know from your perspective, as you and the board thinks about the reinvention of RTP, we're working hard to really envision how the park translates to the rest of the state. So could you talk a bit about geography, how that defines your thinking?
Right. Well, I mean, geography certainly matters in the sense that we're here to serve the state of North Carolina. So understanding that commitment is first and foremost. But in serving North Carolina, how do we use our global brand to break down international barriers? How do we open North Carolina up to more of the world so that our people here in the state can be connected to global marketplace, to global ideas, and how do folks around the world know who we are, to understand what we have to offer so that they're looking to North Carolina for investments and job creation. So geography matters, and in some ways geography doesn't matter. It's the power of compelling and engaging ideas. We think this idea of virtual connectivity is extremely important and valuable in terms of connecting those ideas. But you got to have the right content and you got to have the right technology to deliver that. We've started some beta concepts with a new project we call the Frontier, which is a physical place that invites all of North Carolina and others around the world. So Enrique, we would love for you guys to consider opening a place in our new Frontier at the Research Triangle Park. Because it's a way in which people of all sorts can get together and share ideas. Adam and American Underground are a part of that. We've talked about School of Science and Math joining. But that's about, understanding our geography of service, but growing well beyond that.
Adam, would you care to comment on how geography plays into your thinking, the American Underground?
Yeah, immensely. I mean, I think we are, at the end of the day, actually in the business of density. We believe that innovating on your couch, talking to your cat, is probably not the best place to come up with the next big idea. You want to do that in a creative space around other smart people. And so that's what we try to provide with the American Underground. But fundamentally, we're also thinking about how we link the region. And so our co-working desk option allows you to work at any of our spaces seamlessly across the region, stop in at the Frontier. We think that's really important to sort of connect places beyond downtown Durham, downtown Raleigh, but all together.
I have a few questions from the audience. Bob, I'll start with you. The question is, when you reached out statewide, what did you learn or identify as some of the greatest opportunities to support innovation and job growth?
Yeah, so the question comes from something we did a couple years ago, which was we did a bus tour across North Carolina, and we traveled from Asheville to Elizabeth City. and asked a whole wide group of community leaders, is RTP still relevant to you? What do we mean to you? And we didn't know the answer, by the way. We just went to listen. But we heard a couple of key things. One we heard is that you still very much are important to North Carolina, because for us, you provide a global brand. When we say we're from Asheville or Elizabeth City, or we know, and we say North Carolina, people make the connection of Research Triangle Park, and therefore they know us as a place that embraces global ideas. So they said that's important. Number two is they said, we want to figure out how we can get connected to what you're doing. How can we get our young people in our community colleges or our K through 12 system or our universities, how do we get them engaged with what's happening in the park? Because we need to learn how to connect more globally. So that was important. And the third one, I think the one that resonated the most with our board, which is what's the next big idea for North Carolina? And they really said, we're looking to Research Triangle Park as one of those places that can help North Carolina move forward on a big idea. And so when we talk about our work at RTP, we talk about it redeveloping, building those physical spaces, reconnecting with great partners like the ones here around the table, and reimagining, because if we're not going to take on the big ideas, who will? And so that was something we very much gathered from that trip.
Great. Yep. So as we wrap up, there's one comment from the audience that I think deserves pointing out. Yes, diversity is important. What about the panel? Point well taken.
Well taken.
I want to thank all of you for participating today and for all of your insights. This is a great group of leaders across the world that are really focused on reinventing space and creating space that's attractive to young entrepreneurs and makes a difference in their communities. So I'm very proud to be associated with all of you. And I hope that those of you in the audience gained something from the conversation today. Thank you all for sharing your work. And let me turn it back over to Anita, who's somewhere, to send us into the next session.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Chancellor.